Right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Mark Weathington, director of the JCRA Arboretum, and we had decided to change the format, and mostly because I like to talk to my peers and colleagues and friends, because I always learn something. And so for our first run at this, I wanted to bring in a professional in front of the camera. This is Jim Putnam. You may know him better as the face with and voice and name and knowledge behind HortTube on YouTube, HortTube. He has got almost 2,000 videos on there. We've talked to him a couple times in the garden, in my personal garden, but also he does how-tos. I was looking at some stuff on how to make now it's gone out of my head, with stones in them and the gabions. And I was going through and boom, there you pop up with building a gabion on there. So it's hands-on, it's information, it's great stuff. So thanks for joining us, Jim.
Yeah, well, thank you for the invite. I always enjoy my talks with Mark over here in the garden. I'm always trying to get, Mark gets a message from me about once a month. Hey, Mark, you want to be on the channel? Hey, Mark, you want to be on the channel? Because Mark's the perfect combination of an ability to run this beautiful garden and also be a plant nerd at the same time. It's a rare combo that he can do both. So,
my wife will attest to the plant nerd. So, we had somebody on staff. You were joining us at Southeastern Plant Symposium this summer. I had somebody on staff who said, Jim Putnam, I watch him. And you've been doing this for a while. How long have you been on YouTube?
Yeah,
as a regular poster?
Right. So it was like 5 years ago. I had a garden center in Johnston County. I had a landscape company that evolved into a plant nursery, and I sold trade gallon containers to other nurseries in Joco. All those guys in the room at the Joco plant show last week, all friends, used to be customers. And then I had a garden center in Johnston County, and I had a spot at the Raleigh Farmers Market. And so I started making videos just for the individual plants that I sold. So I could tell the customer, hey, I've got a video for that. And then, I could go to the next customer potentially at that point. So I had no intentions of building a big giant audience or anything. It was just, I was combining my love of plants with my love of tech. Those two things melded together for me pretty well. Yeah.
I got you. So, I was approached by another nursery one time to do videos about plants, and I shot a couple for them because they were friends, and I went to see if they were continuing on, and they and I didn't want to do any more. I did them to kind of help them get started, and they said, no, that's too much work. They quickly decided not to. So, what was the turning point from going from?
Yeah, people started showing up at the garden center from long distances, and so I kind of quickly realized, there's a lot of people watching from, well outside of the area, and then Southern Living Plant Collection, reached out, and Encore Azaleas, plant development services, and so I started doing some content for them, and I continue to do some content for them as well as, I wear two hats a lot of places that I go. I'm trying to get content for the channel, and I'm also trying to add plants to the Southern Living Plant Collection and that kind of thing. So yeah, it became really real when a plant brand reached out and said, we like your content, are you interested in working with us? Which I thought was a joke, honestly, to start with. Right.
Well, this is something I tell people all the time. It was for years and years and years. All the plant work was being done up north, all the big work, and breeding and the plant introductions. And if the plant would grow in the south, great. But they didn't really care if it grew in the south because all the market was up north. But now everybody's moving south, and the big population centers are, Raleigh and Charlotte and Atlanta and Huntsville, Alabama, and it's all south. And all of a sudden, places are realizing that they can make money. I know think PDSI, their first big one was maybe Confetti Abelia, if people can remember that, and then the Encore Azaleas, which were just blew open the door. We were talking about this, absolutely changed horticulture. That that was a crazy, just a leap forward in terms of the idea that you could have spring flowering shrubs flower again. And then the Southern Living plant collection. Again, I haven't grown every plant, but every plant I've grown has been a winner. And I think that's the key to building a brand is you've got to put out quality. As soon as you say, hey, we need more, and you start grabbing things and saying, oh, these are part of the collection too, that's where you run into your problems because you ruin the brand. Yeah, well, and you got to make sure the sizes are right on the tags and things like that. You know, if you put 3 to 4 feet on the tag and it's 7 feet tall in 2 years, that's. So you're looking at loropetalums. Is that what you're saying? Every dwarf loropetalum in about 3 years gets taller than me. They're just slower getting there now, but they still will. Yeah, well, there's some pretty good dwarf ones now. Although I don't know why we all want little plants. I like big things. Yeah, well, you can just sell more of the little ones. Well, you can sell more of the little ones, and Purple Daydream, that's a great loropetalum. I think it's the best dwarf so far. All right, I haven't tried Purple Daydream. Yeah, so far it seems to be the sturdiest in the landscape and fits the actual dwarf. Yeah. So, it's kind of you sit in an interesting spot. You're out, you're a gardener, and a lot of what your content is you doing things in your own garden. Yeah, you're out, you're visiting gardens, whether it's botanic gardens or like you're coming to my house and seeing what people are actually planting and what it's looking like in their gardens. And then you're working with a company that's marketing plants, but also with the breeders behind those plants and finding other plants that could fit in those in their program. So you're kind of seeing it, sometimes the breeders have ideas, but they don't know what people actually want. Right. Yeah. People have great plants, but when you give them to a company that's got to grow them and sell them, they don't do well in a container under regular. So, where do you think that you're having the most impact on that kind of that pipeline, and you're communicating the plants to people, and that may be right. Well, knowing you have to know what's going to be a good ornamental plant. I mean, when you're releasing something in a plant brand, it can't be something that's completely niche. You're a niche. You and I are niche plant guys. I mean, I want a plant that I want plants that there's 3 of. I've got a Camellia behind me. I'm going to give it to you. Yeah. There's 3 in the world. That's one of them. And so that's my thing. But when you're out looking for a plant brand, it's got to be something that is going to appeal to a lot of people. And so it's got to be compact. It's got to be, unfortunately, evergreen. And I don't know why people hate winter so much, but they truly do. And it's does it lose its leaves? Well, I don't see you outside in January, Bob. Buy the plants. Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm with my job. Spring and fall are so busy. I'm, August and January is all my gardening. So, well, you need evergreen bones, but a lot of the more interesting things take a break in the winter. They go to sleep. They store some energy and then they come at it hard. Yeah. So. I won't ask you your favorite plant because that's always one of those just about impossible questions. But what's the plant that you're getting into right now? Something different that you're not something different for you that you right. I go through phases where it's osmanthus for a little while, and camellias are always the easy answer in this business because they're so interesting. And again, it's the only time of year I used to be off. Was when the camellias were blooming. But I would say Elysium probably as much as anything currently. There's so many new, interesting, we're going in directions. And it's one of those so underused. I mean, all of us in horticulture know the value of a plant that deer won't eat, and it's evergreen, and it flowers, and, but conveying that to consumers. Sun and shade. And drought tolerant once it's established. Honestly, a little bit wimpy in the first year or so. But all right, I have breaking news for you. Okay. So, talking to our audience here, Elysiums, Anise trees, Anise shrubs, we have native North American ones, there are Asian ones, there's Mexican one. Actually, that's star anise that you cook with is an Elysium verum. do not use the seed pods of the other Asian or any of the ones you can grow because they're very poisonous, our native ones included, which is what keeps deer away from them.
Yeah, right.
This past spring, I had deer going to town on my Elysium.
Oh, no way. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this changes everything I've been saying for all this time. There are some species in China with yellow flowers. Elysium, I don't know if you've grown them, Simonsii and Wardii, beautiful
I know
plants.
The species, but I haven't grown them.
And there was a hybrid that I had with those called Moonshine.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more dwarf. And I realized after I got over my panic that deer were eating my anise shrubs or star flowers or whatever you want to call them. I realized it was the moonbeam that was the hybrid, and it was the Elysium Simonsii and the Elysium Wardii, all the yellow flower species.
That's weird.
Maybe they're not as poisonous as the Japanese and our natives, but I was like, all right, well, I guess we're okay because they're still not touching the other ones.
Oh, isn't that wild?
But you're right about. I mean, they've kind of exploded what you can do with in the garden
and variegations.
Yeah. So, I like that's actually this tends to be the case. Plant people kind of go on these same tangents at the same time.
Right.
We've been collecting every Elysium we can find here because of the deer tolerance as much as anything else.
And you see Miss Scarlet. I think we talked about Miss Scarlet before. Miss Scarlet's an interesting find because all the flowers are on the outside of it, which I think it will be now used by plant breeders. And that's key. It's little things that people don't look at that make a difference. We were talking before we started about a young man. He was an intern here. He interned with a plant breeder this summer. Now he's back here while he's finishing up his degree, working with us, and he wants to be a plant breeder. And he's talked about, he really wants to learn from some of the folks that you work with the program. But we were talking about some of the Styrax. There's some exciting stuff going on with Styrax. Yes. Oh my gosh.
And something that it takes a plant breeder to look at because you don't notice it, but some of the pedicels, the little stalk that holds the flower, on some are purple and on some are green. Yeah, they can be a green leaf plant or a purple leaf plant and have a different. And the flower's white on both of those, but if you grow them side by side, same exact tree but with that different color pedicel, you'll see there's something different. Yeah. But unless you're like one of those people who really is looking at it, it's hard to tell what it is. But one has and that's, there are big breakthroughs like the Encores, but there are these little things that make a plant just pop a little bit more.
Well, that Nightfall Styrax is probably, I can't imagine there's any way to grow enough of that plant. That plant is going to be, oh my, I was drawn right to it like this.
Well, we got ours.
Oh, you did?
Just this week we got ours. Tell the audience what this snowbell is, this Nightfall.
Yeah, it's a weeping black foliage Styrax, and it looks like one of Denny's weeping purple red buds almost. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like, but it's a black foliage. But the stems have that beige color, and so that because it's weeping, you can see the stems up at the top of it through that black. And it was just like, oh my gosh, what a plant! Yeah, I've got to have one.
Yeah. We here at the JC Ralston Arboretum, one of our early, as you know, one of the early plants that we became known for was one that Dr. JC Ralston collected in Korea, Emerald Pagoda, which had large leaves, large flowers, and so it's a plant that we've always been really interested in. And as a landscape plant, Styrax is great because it flowers a little bit later. You have the red buds and our native dogwoods, the cherries are all kind of finished up, and then the Styrax goes. It's still spring, but so I like where it hits time-wise.
Well, and I think as a plant breeder, it also hits in zone 5 to 9.
Yeah.
Which is like everyone.
Everyone you go from north to south. I mean, that's true.
That's another thing about it.
That's pretty neat. Yeah. So let me talk about. I want to go back to your HortTube YouTube channel, and just I'm curious. Our most popular, most viewed video is on worm composting.
Yes, right. Yeah.
So what do you know what's the most viewed? And I should say he's got like 177,000 subscribers to the channel. And
yeah, mostly they're how-tos for sure. The how-tos are going to get the most views. A few of my garden tours have hundreds of thousands of views, but I have a clay planting video, and people struggle so mightily with, how to plant in clay soils. And, from here to Houston, through a band that's just, what's really super funny about that video is the comments down below are like, that you call that clay? I'll show you clay. It's like competitive clay.
that is funny.
There's like 2,000 comments below. Well, come to my house, I'll show you clay. But yeah.
So what's the takeaway from that? What if people watch that? What's the 1, 2, 3 takeaways?
Well, I think the main part of that video that I wanted to talk about with folks is stop buying some of those things that people are trying to sell you for planting, because some of those planting mixes are the worst thing that you could put into a clay soil. Some sort of peat base, some sort of something that's going to absorb water and hold it there for some period of time, or like the worst. So you're better off just planting it directly in the clay, mounding it up, or using a little pine bark soil conditioner, maybe a shovel full of compost if that makes you feel good at night. If that makes you sleep better. But other than that,
I think people get scared when they dig in it. And, it really, I try and tell people that clay is packed with nutrients.
It's mineral rich.
And so, I try and tell people, and, you amend beds, not holes.
Yeah.
Top dress with compost, and your soil will build over time.
Yeah.
That I'm a big believer in mulching with things that'll break down quickly.
Yeah.
The quicker your mulch breaks down, and people don't want it to break down quickly because they don't want to put it back out. But that's every time when it breaks down, it's building soil.
Yeah, wood chips are I get anybody, if you have access to wood chips initially and you have 6 months to wait, a layer of wood chips and walk away and come back, you got new soil.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what those things will do.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So what have you got? What's something on your channel that you wish more people would watch?
Well, see the videos so there's videos for I do the how-to videos, and then I do the videos as developing this property over here, by campus. I'm only a few blocks from here. And those videos are fun, and I know people are getting a lot out of them, but what fulfills me is going out and talking to you or talking to Tony Avent, or I went to the Chicago Botanic Garden just a few weeks ago, and Richard Hawkey's just, he's a legend. And then over to Kim Shearer at the Morton. Those videos will get about half the views, but they're filling my energy back up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So even if they're not watching them as much, it helps me. And I learn so much. I mean, if I'm running my mouth right now, but, a lot of times I like to just go around those folks and just be quiet.
Yeah.
Let these people that have done this longer than you just talk.
Yeah. I agree. I think, every
time I do a garden tour with a great gardener, it doesn't have to be a professional. It can be just somebody who's just been gardening for a long time.
Yeah.
I learn so much from what I see, but also from what they say. It's amazing the number of times I'm like, I never thought about that.
Right.
That's amazing. That sounds much easier.
And for me, another thing I get is, so I started at a garden center in North Raleigh called Rake and Hoe. It's long gone, but it was there for a long time. And then I had landscape company, nursery business, and then back to a garden center. And so I learned to speak a language. I thought that I understood how each of those groups need to talk to one another with language. But the other thing you can get from listening to people is how they communicate things. You'll learn how to be a better teacher because they'll have some way to say it that, like, wow, that conveys something that would have taken me 3 paragraphs. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I agree. It's and that's often a problem for me as I smack my mic, is I'm so embedded in this and enmeshed in this that sometimes I'm starting at a different spot than somebody who's just coming in. That's why we do this gardening in the South, is to really take it back to basics and help people with the clay. We always say this gardening in the South program is for new gardeners
Yeah.
and new gardeners to the south because, you know, the Long Island folks who keep telling me that, you know, in Long Island, the soil's so deep, I can stick my arm all the way down.
Right.
I'm like, yeah. In Long Island, I can grow anything. I'm like, yeah. That's up in the Arctic North. It's north of Maryland. So I finally went to Long Island one time, and their soils are like that, and they can grow anything up there.
But you know, the one thing about it, though, it's zone 7 through the center part of, you know, through part of the island there, but their days are so much shorter in the wintertime. I've done consultations with folks, and I'm looking at their gardens, and then I'm looking at mine going, okay, so we're supposed to be in the same zone, but that shorter day, you know, if you get below freezing for an extra hour than us every day, it has an impact. It looks a lot more bleak in the wintertime.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that for sure. But
they call it bleak, but you know, winter in the north.
They're crying into their bundles of money. No. So you've been around here for quite a while, and we were mentioning earlier, which I'm supposed to plug. I did not. We were talking about. So I used to say it's the prettiest bathroom in a garden are necessary. Until I went to see Longwood's new garden when that was done with all green walls and everything. It's real pretty, but it kind of smells. But it is real pretty.
Yeah,
no
I had
offense.
a big thunderstorm when I was up there the last I didn't get to do anything there last time. We had a tornado warning while I was there. Oof. Yeah, went in front of our bus. We were on a bus going there, had a tornado warning. Like every phone on the bus went off at one time.
Oh God.
And then we drove another quarter mile, and literally a tornado had gone across our path, and then we got to Longwood, and it just stayed like that the whole time.
Oh, that's no good.
Yeah.
Well, our new shirt, this is the first time it's being shown. So we were talking about the necessary because Jim remembers it going in.
Yes.
So for sale, $20 at the Arboretum. We don't ship. Come on in.
Yeah.
But it's a great bathroom.
Yes.
Got to visit our bathroom.
Yes, right.
So you had some memories of it going in.
Yeah. It was built at in the Civic Center during a landscape and home garden show. Part of it was, and then it was, brought over here too.
So
it's fun. Yeah.
Literally a student, professional project was building this structure, and then we brought it over here and kind of built a bathroom and
and it's
dropped this on top of it. Just about from my understanding.
Yeah, it's really neat.
So when was your first, what's your first kind of memories of coming here?
Oh, probably, at least, 90-ish.
Okay.
So sometime around there. I mean, it's really grown up. Quite a bit, but a long time. I mean, I grew up on Pool Road, and then, I went from Bug Elementary to Carnage Middle School to Enloe, and then NC State. So I got closer to this direction across the city.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spent my whole life here.
So you're one of the few people who is from Raleigh.
Yes.
Raleigh had a population of 10
right, I was one of them.
In 1980, and now has whatever, 1 million. I don't know how many people live in Wake County. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But it's neat. There's a lot more people to talk to and show what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So my first visit, I had the flu. I was with a group from Atlanta Botanic Garden. I was working there, and I had bad, flu. I could barely move, and it was rainy, drizzly, and we got here, and I was miserable.
What year was it?
But this was 96. So this was the year JC died. It was,
gotcha.
and it was fall. It was October because the state fair was going on, and my boss said, "All right, we'll get back here at 45 minutes and decide if we want to stay longer." And I came out and I saw so many things that I had never seen before. I was blown away. Yeah. And we went back to the bus at 45 minutes, and I could have stayed another 4 hours. And the rest of the group all wanted to leave. Yeah. And it made me furious. And I was, like I said, I was sick. Right. And I was happy to walk around in the
Well, this was a collection at that time that there just weren't many like, I gathered one of everything and planted it.
Right. Well,
Right.
and what's interesting, what the plant I remember was a plant called, that was here, and it was actually where the visitor center, the education center is now, but Albizia, it was labeled Albizia coreana.
Mm-hmm.
And we have another plant, Albizia calcora, and it's a big bean tree with white flowers. It's nothing fantastic, but I remember that plant for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And now in Europe,
Yeah.
I am constantly getting asked for seeds of that.
Oh,
that is
really?
like the number one plant that they want, that people want seeds of for whatever reason.
Isn't that wild?
I'm not sure why.
Yeah. You know what's so interesting to me about well, first of all, Stephanie, my girlfriend who you've met, who is my camera person, she was in, I think, JC's last class.
Was that right?
Yeah, he sure was. But these tours I take around America should be called the JC Ralston Tour, because I can't go, I don't care where I go and film with what plant professional, they're going to, JC Ralston's name will come up. He sent me this was sent, it's an incredible thing what he did in such a short time.
Oh yeah. I tell people this often. There's a Horticulture magazine did I think 2004, they did a commission of painting called the Heavenly Garden Party.
Yeah.
And it was the 25 most important gardeners in ever.
Yeah.
As seen by Western people.
Right, yeah. Right, yeah.
But and I always tell people, don't feel bad, because you had to be dead to be in this.
Yeah.
But it was Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
It was the greatest service you can do your country is to introduce a new plant. Some of our North Carolina natives, like Elizabeth Lawrence.
Yeah.
But JC was one of those.
Yeah.
Along with Gertrude Jekyll and Capability Brown and all those folks. And so, I mean, that's pretty lofty company to be in.
Yeah.
And it's amazing he did it with, at that time, 8 acres of ground, and it's because he sent things everywhere. And I'm with you. I go visit people, and I get dragged around, the Scott Arboretum to show the plants from the Arboretum that came in back in 1994 and were spread around. And
he just sent. We got his box. We got this box. Don't know what it is, but
So I'm going to Australia to give a talk in September, and that's. It isn't because they want me. It's because I represent the Ralston Arboretum,
right?
Which
You're
is
underselling yourself too.
Well, I'll give them a good talk, but there's a reason that my name comes up. But yeah, it's pretty amazing how that happens.
Yeah.
Now, did you have classes with him, or were you a horticulture student?
Political science.
Political science.
Yes. Yeah. No, I had vision of law school, but I was priming tobacco. I was a field hand, priming tobacco as a kid and doing all those kinds of things. And I got that job at Rake and Hoe, and I just let that, steer me. I mean, I have not regretted it for a minute. I mean, it's not work.
Right.
Somebody asked me on one, like I was at Cheekwood, I think, and somebody asked, do you do vacationing while you're on these trips? I was like, this is a vacation. I'm sitting here talking about plants.
Right.
This is not work. This is just what I like to do. And it just happens if it happens to help people, that's great.
Right.
But it's super, it's just talking plants.
It is. That's why I say when people say, hey, can you give a talk about, your last trip to Taiwan or China or New Zealand? I'm the only person who gets asked to, give what I did on my summer vacation type talk. Other people are being hounded and, hey, look at these pictures I took. And, people are asking me to do that. So, it's kind of the same, right there in the same boat. Have you done any traveling to do gardens to film gardens in like internationally at all?
No, but that's coming. Yeah. It's coming. I'm going over to Germany in April and then working my way back toward England. That's the next phase of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's the plan. It's always been, in the plans.
You could do a month in Cornwall.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's very cool. So Tell me,
Oh,
you
look
brought
at
some
this lizard.
plants. You mentioned the Camellia. Tell me what's.
Yeah, this is mine. This is one I found years ago. It's a pink. It's a Camellia Japonica. It's a double. It's got. You saw the photo of it. It's pink.
Yeah.
Kind of fused anthers. Peony form.
Peony form, but it was
Yeah.
different than that. The pink anthers were.
Yeah, they're
they
kind
were-
of fused.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah, and it stayed that way. I've waited a lot of years to make sure that's that was what it's going to do. This is one of the first rooted cuttings of it, so I figured unnamed.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
and then this is just a white Calicarpa Americana, except for it's Buddy Lee's, who invented Encore Azaleas, who we've already mentioned here, and a lot of other plants. But this one is a super compact form that he did. I figured maybe you would want to root some, or I can root them, and then you can get.
Yeah,
put one in the
we
garden.
love to root those.
But this one is this tall in 2 years and equally as wide, and literally white berries from the top to the bottom, and you can see how full it is, and you can also the leaves are a bit closer together.
Now, do you know what American beautyberries are good for?
Birds.
well, I mean, I'm talking for people. Do you know?
No, I have no idea.
You crush up those leaves, rub them on you.
Yeah.
Mosquitoes will stay away.
Oh, really?
No joke.
Yeah.
I've been told the Japanese ones don't, but it, honest to goodness, works.
Right.
So there you go. Natural.
Yeah. But this one's not. They're not. Releasing this as a other than just open. Just open to folks. But I thought it was an interesting.
That's really cool.
That's one thing about my garden is only 0.19 acres, and so I've now at a point where every plant has to have a story.
Mm-hmm.
That's my new thing. Is it cannot go in the ground unless So everything now, if you come over sometime, everything it's from Dr. Durr, it's from you, it's from somebody, it's from somebody. It's got to have a story, attached to it. Otherwise, I've got my just a plain Jane azalea that was at my grandfather's funeral. That kind of thing. It's got to have a story.
I agree.
Yeah.
And a lot of there are the stories behind plants, but then there's the personal connections with the plants, and that's I keep all the track of all those things. But you're right. The plants that you tend to after a while you gravitate towards are the ones that bring back a memory and whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But I was writing a textbook chapter about botanic gardens' role in plant conservation through propagation and dissemination.
Yeah.
And there's always, in botanic gardens, there's always these things about profit sharing. And those are really kind of based on old ideas of going out in the wild, collecting plants, and then making lots of money from them.
Yeah.
The old Q going out and getting all the blue orchids and denuding the forests and things like that.
Right.
And so one of the examples I put in there, and this is somebody we've talked about, and plant is got in touch with Buddy Lee to talk about the Encore Azaleas.
Right.
And it winds up that it was, I believe in the 60s, somebody was sent seed of a Taiwanese rhododendron azalea called Old Hammy Eye.
Yeah.
Now, Old Hammy Eye blooms in the fall.
Yeah.
And that was grown and passed around. And at some point, I think in the very early 90s, 90, 91, 89, something like that, Buddy Lee got it and crossed it with others, and
Existing varieties.
A decade later, 2001 maybe, the first ones came out of this Encore Azalea. And to all the academics, I say, how does the profit sharing work when we're talking about 50 years from the time it arrived in somebody's hands to something that's commercially successful?
Yeah.
But my point is not the profit sharing. It's what these plant breeders do is not a quick process.
No, not at all. And he had been collecting all of the azaleas that had that bloomed in the fall, because there are some fall blooming azaleas, or ones that have the tendency to repeat bloom in the fall. And it crossed those all kinds of different ways. And it wasn't until Ohamii came along that it actually was a success. And that thing, every garden I walk into now, there it is. Everyone's using it. It's not a particularly attractive azalea.
No.
Yeah. It's kind of a hairy thing.
It's hairy, and the flower color to me, I always think of it as, probably because I worked with somebody who wore this, but a particularly unattractive color of lipstick, kind of
Right.
corally, pinky. I don't know I've ever known anybody else besides her to wear that color lipstick,
Right.
but it just drove me something about it.
Yeah,
and the
right.
color's the same.
Well, there you go. Memories.
Memories, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, so you're talking to gardeners all over. You're seeing gardens. What is the one essential piece of advice? Because that's really what you're doing is teaching people.
Right. Keep the ground covered. And whether that's, nature is always trying to cover the earth and we're always trying to uncover it. And that means raking leaves. That means a lot of the activities that we're doing, are, the leaves are fine. But, what happens in any kind of garden, and what we're seeing, back here behind us is trees that have been planted and shrubs that have been planted. They limb themselves up over time.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tuck the next layer under them and they limb themselves up. And then you can tuck the next layer and just this
Right.
layer. The great gardens, I don't say great. The gardens that are most appealing to me have that kind of, they have high shade. So the trees have been limbed way up so they can sneak light into them,
Mm-hmm.
but then they have this understory all the way down to the ground layer. And, those gardens have less weeds,
Yep.
and they're full and they're visually appealing.
And they're more, I hate sustainable, resilient.
They are more resilient.
It rains here in the South. We get this time of year, we get rain.
Yeah.
It just happens in 3
Floods.
inches
We
at a
get flood
time
warnings.
in
Right.
10 minutes. And when you have that layering, every layer is slowing the water down because when the ground's dry and all that rain drops, it all runs off.
Yeah.
But if you can slow it down, you can kind of trap it with that bottommost layer.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of the whole trend, the new naturalism is really mimicking what you see in nature in terms of the undergrowth and the layers that you have there. So it's good design.
Yes, right.
It's more resilient.
Resilient is the right word.
And
for it.
it's it kind of hits all those buttons. I agree.
And I ask people this question all the time because lots of gardeners or initial landscaping that people do, they put little balls 3 or 4 feet apart because the tag says they get 3 to 4 feet wide, and so they're going to put them 3 or 4 feet apart. But the sun is just cooking every angle on that thing, including off the foundation and everywhere. And the plant is just under so much stress because nowhere on earth would a plant just come up 4 foot from anything else with brown, dark mulch around it. It's just not even a healthy situation.
Well, I'm in a relatively new garden. I've got woodlands around me, and I'm going back to what you're saying. I want to clear a lot of that out, thin it out, all the little stuff coming up, and make beds and plant all through there. But I'm doing it little piecemeal at a time because once you clear out all the smaller stuff, the weeds come up. It's basically weed free, and as soon as you do that, once I do it, I come back in and plant and get my leaves out there because woodland garden, I don't want really mulch to suppress the weeds. But if I were to go in there, and as is my tendency to want to clear it all out so I have a blank slate so I can do it, and I'm not cutting down the big stuff, I'm cutting down, kind of scrubby stuff in there, I would have a huge weed problem and I'd never get to garden because I'd always be weeding or spraying or something in the other areas I hadn't gotten to.
And the poison ivy would will just, you clear cut anything and wait 3 months. Here, it's going to be covered in poison ivy.
Blake, do we have any questions from audience that people want from Jim?
There were a couple of questions. So somebody wanted to ask Jim about, I guess, about a video you did about using arborist chips.
Yes.
They said that they've done the same to create new beds within the last 6 months. As the beds cook down, how deeply should I plant into them, knowing the chips will continue to decompose? I.e., should the root ball be planted at the original soil level, the level of the wood chips, or something else?
Somewhere probably in the middle of it. But if it's still so thick that you're having to make that decision, they may not be cooked down quite as much as I'd want them cooked down. They're not at that point where they're probably releasing that nitrogen yet. They're gonna, those would. one of those overblown internet things is that, wood's going to steal your nitrogen and everything's going to go haywire. But it does a little. It does initially a little. So you don't, I would plant about halfway down and maybe leave, I just plant them flush with the top of the wood chips. They'll sink down anyway. That's the way I'm going to answer that.
Yeah, that's what I do. They'll sink down with the wood chips. And if you get some, the roots showing at top,
anyway.
you mulch it or throw some compost on top, and that'll do nothing but help. Yeah. I agree.
And I generally want to see the top of the root ball as it came out of the container.
Yeah.
I usually
and then mulch over that part.
Yes. Yeah. I generally, when I finish planting it, want to look down and see what I saw in the top.
Yeah. Everybody remember that. Too high is better than too low.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Too low, it'll kill the plant. Too high, as long as you water it while it's getting established, you'll be fine. And you have to be careful because, nurseries are potting up a ton of things at a time, and sometimes they're potted a little bit deep, and you kind of I often are kind of scraping off a little bit off the top.
Yeah, I'm going
even
down
still,
to the roots.
Until I'm getting to where roots are, and then planting, and that's really at the top of the soil. So, that's.
And you're going to dig a little deeper than you need to plant, and you're not going to recompact that soil enough below it. So it's also going to sink just from the settling of the soil that you dug out underneath it.
Yeah.
So y'all were talking about a weeping dark-leafed Styrax earlier.
Yes.
Somebody asked if the foliage has a similar color to evening light, if you're familiar with that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very similar to evening light. There was a one earlier called, I think, purple dress, purple gown, something like that. And it wasn't a very good dark leaf one. But the really nice thing about evening light is it doesn't come out as dark purple as a lot of early leafing out things, but it darkens up.
Yeah, right.
And when it flowers, it's those white flowers against it, the foliage about as dark as it's going to get, which I really like. And I have not seen evening light all through the season, but I'm told I'm sorry, I haven't seen nightfall all through the season, but I'm told it's very similar.
Yeah, but that was the plant that I was most drawn to last week. I mean, I have to have it. Yeah.
And that about does it for all the questions that are relevant to today's discussion.
All right. Well, once again, let me plug this once again before we go. Our new shirt. This is on the back. This is on the front. A lot of discussion about front and back, but I won because I've got a belly, and if you put it on the front, it looks real 3D.
No, it looks great.
Great shirt. You can come in here and get it. Sometimes with our online auctions, there's things we sometimes will ship them if you're not in the area. But Jim, I really appreciate this. Everybody, you got to check out Jim's there's a website, HortTube.com, I assume, and HortTube.com. But the YouTube channel, if you subscribe to ours, boy, I'm telling you. You really should be subscribing to HortTube. And if you don't subscribe to ours, you still should be subscribing to HortTube. You can look up Jim Putnam. You can look up HortTube. That's with 2 T's in the middle, Hort and Tube.
Yes. It's a silly name, but it works.
And it's really great information. I send people there when they have questions about specific things, because it's seeing it hands-on and doing it right in front of you really helps out. So I hope you check that out. If you do, I'm sure you're going to be thrilled with it. Jim, I really appreciate you being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And we'll continue chatting off air about this, that, and the other.
Awesome. Thanks.